Hey guys, I am back here with another speed build for The Sims 3. So this time it's a little different because it's not part of either of my two series. In case you haven't seen them, I am doing two different Sims 3 speed build series. One is a series of Disney builds based off of castles and cottages and stuff like that from the Disney films. And the other is an After the Apocalypse series, which is a bunch of builds or buildings which are run down and gross because the apocalypse happened and now they're being repurposed. So if you're interested in either of those, I would recommend you go check those out because I really love those. But for just a change of pace, I decided to do this time. This was kind of a whim that I did, and I actually really like how it came out. So this is a witch house, and it is very heavily influenced by the game The Witcher 3. If you've seen it or heard of it, well, I guess if you haven't, here you go. So The Witcher 3 is a game that is for PlayStation and Xbox, I believe, and also PC. Like most games are available on the PC as well. But yeah, it's like this medieval-ish kind of world, but it's very, very dark. It's filled with monsters and creatures, and you go out and hunt them, and that's what witchers do. There are also, of course, normal witches, like witches who cast spells and stuff like that, which is really cool. I'm very much in love with the world of The Witcher 3. I think it's a very cool world. It's very dark, and I really love it. So that's kind of what this house was based off of. So I just kind of had this idea that I wanted to build a witch house, and a lot of the custom content that I have in my game is actually based, or not based, it's from The Witcher 3. Because one of the modders that I get a lot of my custom content from to basically modified or took a bunch of the meshes from the Witcher game, I should say, and made it for The Sims 3, and that's what I have. I've used it before in my medieval builds and my rundown apocalypse builds. I've even used some in the castle builds because, of course, castle is medieval. So this time was just like, this was basically an excuse for me to just use all the content indiscriminately and just like go for it, you know? So that's what I decided to do. So the idea for this house was just to make it like a hut. So it's very low to the ground. It was kind of supposed to be swallowed up by the earth, which is why you see me kind of playing around here with the constrain floor elevation tool, which I don't normally do. I actually did not even really know how to use this tool until a few months ago when I started watching speed builds and then started actually doing my channel stuff. I actually did not know how to do this stuff. So or rather, I knew the cheat existed, I just didn't know what it could possibly be useful for. So now that I know, I've been experimenting with it a lot more. So that's how I got the house to be kind of consumed into the earth, into the terrain there, is with that tool. And I also wanted to make a tree growing out of it. So I chose like the creepiest looking witchy tree to grow out of the middle of this house. And I put the roofing built around it. Which was actually kind of fun to do, I must admit. The only thing, because like it's really, really handy for the rest of the gameplay in The Sims 3, like where you zoom in and big buildings and trees and stuff disappear, so it's like you can actually see, which is really convenient. Except in this. This is like the one time when I've been like, oh, I wish I could see my tree up close, because every time I zoom in, of course, you can't see it because it disappears. So, yeah, you can only kind of see it from afar, which is kind of a shame in this case, but hey, whatever, right? You live and you learn. Yeah, so at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to kind of mark off the location of the tree trunk. Because, of course, if there's a tree trunk in the middle of the house, you're not going to want your sim or anyone to walk into it. And also, I figured that if it is like a big tree trunk, that it's probably going to be used a little bit ritualistically, because this is a witch, like I said. This is her home. So I'm taking a bunch of just plants and like totem kind of items and surrounding the trunk just so I kind of know where it is. Because of course, as you can see, as I zoom in, you can no longer see that trunk. And I wanted to make sure I had a very good mental map of where that thing is up close while I'm working. Yeah, so about the witch though that I kind of had in mind for this building, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of witches, depending on whatever kind of lore you look at or which fairy tale. If you want to go darker or happier, more Disney esque, like the amount of kinds of magic that just exists out there, like it's boundless. It just depends on whatever kind of imagination you want to go for, right? So in this case, I imagine my witch to be very earthy, and at the same time, she's not evil. I want to make that clear. She's not evil, but she's like the magic that she uses kind of requires a certain level of sacrifice, and she knows that. So it's kind of like the cliche: you have to break a few eggs together to make an omelet. It's basically that's kind of the law of her magic. Like you have to do some sacrifices, you have to do some rituals to the moon on whatever kinds of uh, night, like yeah, on the new moon night or something like that, to make this certain spell work, or you're gonna need that certain kind of voodoo to make it work or something. I guess in a way, if you wanted to look at it, it is kind of like voodoo, the kind of magic that I'm thinking of, maybe. Um, yeah, so that's the kind of witch that I imagine is living here. So again, she's very close to the earth, but at the same time, she's not a nice person. I imagine her to be kind of solitary, and she's the kind of person that would smite, I guess, or the people who wrong her. So, or she's the kind of one that would just be like a little bit wicked enough where you would come and you would ask for one thing and she'd give you that. Like she'd answer your prayer, but she would give you something a little darker, like the thing that you wouldn't quite expect, and you'd be upset in the end. um, so yeah, like I thought that was kind of a cool idea. I don't really generally like very perfectly nice people or builds or characters. Like characters in general should have a little bit of darkness to them. Because what's the fun in being totally a goody two shoes, right? So yeah, so that's the woman who lives here. So she is, like I said, the witch, and she's going to use her magic to do whatever. And people would come here and beg her for good crops or to help them meet the love of their life, and she would take a good pay if they didn't pay enough, or if they were rude to her, then she could definitely get back like that. She would definitely get back at them. Like this is not a witch that you would want to mess with at all or make angry. um yeah, so that's the idea for the witch that lives here. And again, that is actually kind of like the witches that are in The Witcher 3, the game. I'm gonna keep referencing that, and I apologize for it, but like I said, that is definitely the game that this building is based for. I don't know. I finished playing it. It's a lot of fun. Like it is probably the biggest game that I've ever played. I have never seen a game as like the main storyline is huge. Like it is massive. I've never seen that before. Like oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. It took me forever to finish because I am a completionist in the hardest core sense. Um, I am that person that has to complete every side quest and collect every collectible and get all the trophies. I am that person. There are only certain exceptions where it's like if the collectible doesn't seem to have any kind of significance or something, like there's very rare cases where I'm just like, nah, I won't go for that. Or if I just don't like a game enough, I guess. But because I liked The Witcher a lot, I was like, I have to do them all. um, so it took me a very long time to finish. It's been my primary game that I've been playing, as far as console games for the past many months now. But I finally finished it, and it was really fun. Yeah, it was super fun. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. The monsters, I think I enjoyed the most. I loved that. Like I'm always a big fan of what do you call it? Like strategy games where you have like choices and stuff where you can plan things instead of just running in. I mean, I do have my fair share of like shoot 'em games or first person shooters that are like just nonsense fun for me, but I get bored with those very quickly. Those are usually like kind of like one offs for me. It's like I play and then I'm kind of done with them after a couple of days, and I want to do something else that feels more significant or that has a stronger storyline. And because like The Witcher has like the different hunts, so it's like you get your mark and you go after the creature that's been hurting people or hunting crops or whatever, and you go off and you have to figure out what kind of oils to put on your blade or what kind of potions to use against this specific kind of monster, because otherwise this monster is going to kick your butt, right? Um, so yeah, you have to be very planning, and especially if you're playing on hard, which is what I try to do. Sometimes I play on easy just to have a good time, but I do try to play on hard if I really like a game and if I feel like I'm doing good at the game. So yeah, that's The Witcher. Like the monsters in The Witcher 3 are so cool. Like there are ones that I just like, oh, in particular, the Leshen, which is like this forest spirit. It's so cool. Like I almost felt bad for killing Leshens, but like of course, it's the mark. You're getting paid for it. You might as well. But yeah, they're really cool. They're like these wood tree spirit creatures that have like antlers and like bone heads, and they go around and like they summon roots, and the roots attack you, and they can summon wolves and stuff. Like, and they protect the forest, so they get really really pissy when the humans like encroach on their forest space, which is why they attack humans, which is why they need to be gotten rid of because they're killing people, unfortunately. But yeah, like things like that are just like so cool to me. I love that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, so at this point, if actually talking about the build, because a lot of this is just decorating, because like I said, this is very much an excuse for me to just use all the decorations that I can possibly get my hands on. So in the kitchen area here, that includes all the stacks of pots and pans and baskets and herbs, all the different herbs. There's like garlic cloves and stuff, and dead ducks and things, which sounds kind of gross, but like I put that all over the kitchen area. You'll also notice that this house is very open. There's not a single wall on the inside. It is just one big open U-shaped floor plan. So this is like the bedroom on this side, and I couldn't exactly put the bed on the wall because, of course, there's literally earth coming up the wall. So the bed is kind of just like suspended in the middle of this place, which is actually, I think, kind of appropriate. It makes it seem pretty earthy, I think, in my opinion. This bed that I'm using is also custom content. I tend to use it a lot in my rundown builds. If you go and look, you may have noticed it has like these kind of wood beams for the canopy, and the canopy itself is very torn. There's a few objects that I use a lot, and that is one of them as far as the beds are concerned. There's also like one toilet that's like a wood square block with like it looks like an old timey toilet. I don't use it in this build, but I use that toilet a lot. So you can notice if you watch my builds that there are certain objects I just love and I use them too much probably. Um, but otherwise, I do get that kind of sense of separation, I think, in this build just by having those different floorings, and I use different wallpapers, and I even tried to use some of the furniture to block off spaces, so there are rooms, kind of, without there actually being rooms. Um, yeah. So, I mean, I tried to make that work. I think it all works out pretty well. Yeah, in a minute here, I think I got it on camera. I should have it on camera. I didn't check. I should have checked this before starting the voiceover, but I didn't. So sorry about that. Um, but I do put in a basement, and the basement's going to have the alchemy station in there, which is all that it's really good for. So, yeah, like even though this is very witch house, like everybody, the residents would know that this is a witch, would know that this is a person that has a lot of power. And that does ritual, like I said, things like maybe sacrificing something to get that kind of power to work. And they would know that, I would imagine. But either way, having her own little basement where she keeps her potions and does her actual like hardcore magic, I thought would be pretty appropriate for her. Um, so yeah, that's like so there is going to be a basement that's small, but it is a place for potion making, to store her magic, and of course we're going to have a wand. I did try to include a bunch of the supernatural expansion pack stuff because we're going to need that. You'll also notice there I do that in a bunch of builds where I use the invisible lights from the debug menu just so I can see what I'm doing before I actually add in real lights. I tend to add in lights at the end of my decorating because it's almost like they're just like accentuating the area. Like they're not. I don't. For some reason, lights for me are not as important until I get to them. However, because of this, I was so happy. I got a chance to use these lantern things. Like the bathroom area, I just loved those lanterns. Like all I could imagine was lounging in that bathtub amongst the trees and the smell of the earth and the lanterns hanging above you. I just thought it would be very very cool. It would be very magical. Like yeah, like I'm pretty digging this house. Like if I were a witch, like this is the kind of witch I think I would be. Just like, yeah, you want your true love? Well, you better cough up something good for me here. um, but yeah, that sounds so super dark. Yeah, so that's me though. So this fireplace, while I was taking screenshots, I had a sim here. Excuse me. But yeah, I had a sim here for screenshots because that's like the one, you get to get out of build by mode to get good screenshots, of course, and also to make it night to get those good screenshots. So while that was going on, I did have the fireplace lit, and some things did catch on fire. It was a pretty bad fire, actually. So I guess if you would want like all those objects, the deco objects, to really last, you would have to get like the fireplace homestead or the fireproof homestead aspiration reward. Or I guess you just have to move things around and play with it until it is clear of the fireplace. But it just looks too good not to use it. I don't understand why the fireplaces are always so flammable. Ugh. That sounds like a stupid statement, but it's true. Like maybe a rug right in front of the fireplace, I can understand. Like a spit of an ember would light that up. But if I have like a deco object sitting next to the fireplace and no rug, like that shouldn't light on fire as easily as it does in The Sims. Although it is an easy way to kill Sims, that's for sure. If you want, like, I need to get rid of you, I'll lock you in a room with a fireplace and a bunch of rugs, right? That's like a standard. Um, but yeah, so you see there, that's the little basement that I mentioned. It's very small and it's just utilitarian, honestly. This is just for magic. Although I did have, again, an excuse to use something. There's this set of rugs that I have that are like magic circles, so it's like pentagrams and stuff, and it's like drawn on the floor. So again, it's just deco, but I was like, yes, I finally get to use it. I was so excited because I haven't had an excuse to. Like, if you're building a building, you shouldn't use an object just because you like an object. You should try to make that object actually fit with the build itself or with the story behind the build or the characters using it, because otherwise it's just not going to seem like it has a place, which is what most of the stuff had. I was like, oh, I love all this stuff, but I just did not have an excuse to use it. There's no place for it in Beast's Castle or a modern apocalypse looking build. There's no place for that kind of stuff. So I had to, I had to make this build just to like satisfy my inner self to use the objects that I wanted to use. So we're actually pretty much at the end of the build here. I did not get a lot of the landscaping, mostly because I just wasn't thinking of it. So you're going to see the landscaping done in the screenshots here. So yeah, this is kind of zoomed out. I ended up putting a cool spooky pond in the front, and there's a huge garden, of course, with all the witch herbs. So it's like all the mushrooms and the weird stuff. That's a good image from backed up where you can see the tree. And there's the tree in the house, I mean, and the night shots I really loved. And I actually put this like one spooky dead tree over there by the pond, and it has like a cauldron and some red lights underneath it, and I thought it looked really spooky. I was actually kind of like happy about that. I thought it turned out pretty cool looking. But otherwise, the inside, because there are so few windows, it's all very dark and very cozy, mystical feeling. That's what all the lights give off. At least I think so. Like, I really like how this turned out. So if you have any opinions or any requests for builds, or if you like this kind of build and you'd like to see other builds like this, let me know in the comments below. Drop me a like, and until next time, have a fabulous day. Bye, guys.